sun beats down on the Giza Plateau, a relentless, white-hot eye in a sapphire sky. It is a dry, suffocating heat that bakes the very stones and shimmers above the endless sands. From where I stand, the desert wind whispers across the dunes, a dry, sibilant hiss that seems to carry the dust of ages. It does little to cool the skin, but it carries with it the distant, muted hum of modern Cairo, a sprawling, chaotic metropolis of 20 million souls that laps at the edges of this timeless sanctuary. The sound feels like an intrusion, a profane noise in a sacred space. Before me, the 3 Great Pyramids pierce the horizon, their familiar triangular shapes an act of sheer defiance against the forces of erosion, entropy, and the fading memory of mankind. They are not just stone. They are anchors, mooring us to a past so remote it feels like another world entirely. And there, crouching eternally in the sand, as if weary from its long vigil, is the silent limestone guardian, the Sphinx. For years I have walked this ground, my boots sinking into the same sand that once felt the tread of pharaohs, priests, and artisans whose names are now lost to time. I have tried to unravel the mystery it holds, a puzzle box of cosmic proportions. The official story, the one taught in universities and printed in textbooks, that this is merely a necropolis, a sprawling city of the dead, has always felt profoundly, almost insultingly inadequate. To look upon the breathtaking precision of the site is to understand. The celestial alignments are perfect, mirroring the stars of Orion's belt with an accuracy that would be a challenge even today. The deliberate geometry, the sacred mathematics woven into the very fabric of the dimensions, connects each structure to the others and to the heavens. I cannot and will not believe this was the work of different pharaohs haphazardly choosing a burial plot over several generations. It screams of a single, stunningly intelligent master plan, a unified technological purpose that we have long forgotten. And it is that purpose, that grand design, that has become the singular obsession of my life. My conviction that Giza was more than a graveyard was irrevocably solidified the day I first learned of the Osiris Shaft. Its entrance is deceptively humble, a simple square cut into the rock of the causeway that links the second pyramid to its valley temple. It is an opening easily missed by the crowds, a discreet doorway to another world, hidden in plain sight. This shaft, they say, is the symbolic burial place of the god Osiris, the lord of the underworld, the figure central to the entire Egyptian concept of death, resurrection, and eternal life. Though it was first noted by explorers in the 1930s, its deepest secrets remain tantalizingly out of reach, submerged beneath a high water table that defied all attempts at exploration. It was not until 1999, with the aid of powerful modern pumps, that its true nature was revealed. Even now, it is a place that feels untouched, a chamber of secrets that has been visited by only a handful of souls since the dawn of time. I remember the day of my own descent as if it were yesterday. The transition is jarring. One moment you are under the blistering Egyptian sun. The next, you are enveloped by a profound, cool darkness. The air changes instantly, growing heavier, the scent of hot sand replaced by the smell of cold, damp limestone and ancient, undisturbed dust. The first level is a simple, hollowed-out room, a crude antechamber, but it is only a prelude. The Osiris Shaft is a trinity of passages, a vertical journey into the bedrock of the plateau itself. A second shaft leads from the floor of the first room, descending to a larger, more formal chamber, complete with alcoves carved into the walls as if for offerings. But the true destination lies deeper still. The final journey is down a rickety, modern metal ladder through a narrow, claustrophobic passage that seems to plunge into the very bowels of the earth. It opens into a vast subterranean cavern, nearly 100 feet below the surface. The silence here is absolute, a physical presence that presses in on you, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water seeping through the rock and the pounding of your own heart. In the center of this final, flooded chamber, surrounded by a moat of dark, perfectly still water, is an island of rock, and upon this island rests an enormous black granite sarcophagus, or more accurately, the lid of one. The lid alone is a monstrous piece of engineering, a solid block of Aswan granite weighing several tons, perfectly carved and polished. The body of the sarcophagus, its true chamber, lies submerged in the murky water, but its visible edges suggest a vessel of colossal size, at least 3 times that of its lid. At the 4 corners of this subterranean island altar, the crumbling, water-eroded remains of 4 massive pillars stand like ancient, weary sentinels. Time and water have ravaged them, but on the fragments that remain, one can still trace the delicate lines of hieroglyphs. The inscriptions that have been deciphered dedicate their profound, hidden place to Osiris, the Lord of the Underground. Mainstream Egyptology tells us that Osiris was a myth, and this tomb is purely symbolic. But as I stood there in the profound, oppressive quiet of the earth's depths, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the eternal darkness, I could not accept that. The sheer, monumental effort required to carve this chamber, to quarry and transport a multi-ton granite sarcophagus from Aswan, hundreds of miles away, to lower it into the planet's heart, to erect these pillars in a flooded cavern, it felt far from symbolic. It felt intensely, overwhelmingly functional. The very name, sarcophagus, a Greek term, means flesh-eater, a chillingly organic description for what is essentially a stone box. Ancient legends, when you strip them of their ritualistic dressing, speak of a process. A being of flesh and blood enters the box, is sealed within, and is consumed or transformed, the body vanishing. To find a sarcophagus empty is common, but here, in this context, it suggests something more. Could it have been a device not for burial, but for transition? A machine for teleportation, or for the transmutation of a physical body into a state of pure energy? It is a wild, fantastic notion, I know, but in that chamber, surrounded by the weight of the world, it felt more plausible than the idea that this was all just for show. My quest for answers forced me to look from the deep underground to the very stones of the pyramids above. In 2008, a study by Greek researchers confirmed a long-held suspicion. The massive limestone blocks of the pyramids are filled with hundreds of thousands of nummelites, disc-shaped marine fossils. This immediately rekindled the old, fierce debate among geologists and engineers. Did the builders quarry these stones from a natural seabed, hewing millions of blocks by hand? Or did they possess a lost technology, a form of advanced concrete, pulverizing the fossil-rich limestone and casting the blocks in place? But for me, this discovery sparked a far more radical and disturbing question. What if the fossils are in the stones not because the land was once an ocean, but because the pyramids themselves were once submerged beneath a great sea? This connects directly to the research of geologists like Dr. Robert Schoch, who argued that the severe vertical water erosion on the body of the Sphinx could not have been caused by wind and sand, but only by thousands of years of heavy rainfall, a climate that hasn't existed in Egypt for at least 7,000 years, long before the supposed construction of the Sphinx. This thought leads inevitably to the persistent global memory of a great flood. It is a story etched into the foundational myths of nearly every culture on Earth, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia, where Utnapishtim builds an ark to survive a deluge sent by angry gods, to the tales of Manu in India and Deucalion in Greece. The biblical account is the most famous, presenting it as a divine act of cleansing, a washing away of the sins of mankind. But if we peel back the layers of religious dogma, we are left with the stark, terrifying possibility of a genuine, planet-altering cataclysm. Some researchers, whose work I find increasingly compelling, suggest this flood was no natural disaster. It was, they propose, a deliberate act, an attack, an assault upon the earth by powers who felt their great experiment, humanity, had become corrupted and needed to be reset. What kind of power could orchestrate such an event, unleashing a deluge with super technology? It strains credulity to think of it as the act of a primitive terrestrial power. But for beings from beyond our world, it might be a different story. And if such a flood was an act of deliberate destruction, one must ask the chilling question: what was it intended to wipe out? What society, what technology, what history was so advanced that it needed to be erased from memory and buried beneath miles of water and mud? The clues to this lost civilization are not just in Egypt. They are everywhere, hidden in plain sight, often at the bottom of our lakes and oceans. Sonar mapping off the western coast of Cuba, in the Pinar del Rio province, has revealed incredible geometric structures, including pyramids and buildings, in 2,000 feet of water, far too deep to be explained by any known historical sinking. In the United States, a place most would never associate with pyramids, researcher Frank Joseph has documented at least 10 pyramid-shaped structures submerged beneath the waters of Rock Lake, Wisconsin. Scuba divers and side-scan sonar have mapped 2 of them, revealing flat-topped, stone-built structures in the murky depths. We see similar anomalies in China, where hundreds of pyramids are hidden from public view. In Alaska, off the coast of Japan, where the massive Yonaguni Monument lies underwater, a terrace structure that many geologists insist is man-made. Yet with every discovery, official sources are quick to dismiss, deny, or obfuscate. They issue terse statements about natural geologic formations or faulty data. They seem desperate to prevent humanity from connecting the dots, from realizing that we may be living on the ruins of a highly advanced, global, prehistoric civilization. It forces you to wonder if the truth is considered a threat to our current structures of power. If these pyramids are indeed part of a planetary energy grid, a legacy of a lost golden age, then shouldn't we demand to know? The secrets are not just submerged in water. They are sealed within the Great Pyramid itself. In 1993, a team of engineers sent a small, treaded robot named Upward 2 up one of the narrow 4x4-inch shafts leading from the Queen's Chamber. For over a century, these had been dismissed by Egyptologists as simple ventilation ducts, a ludicrous explanation for passages that were sealed at both ends. The robot crawled slowly up the dark, dusty passage, its camera feeding back the first images from a place no human had seen for 4,500 years. Then, after a journey of 200 feet, it came to a sudden stop. Its light illuminated a small limestone slab, a door blocking the shaft. It was fitted with 2 copper handles, one of which was broken. The official explanation was, again, symbolic. A door for the Queen's soul to pass into the afterlife. But the explanation felt hollow. Why build a symbolic door and then block it? And why does only the Great Pyramid, out of all the pyramids in Egypt, have this feature? I have often been told that the pyramids were simply tombs, robbed in antiquity. Yet we have discovered numerous pyramids in the 20th century, with their central chambers perfectly sealed, untouched since the day they were built. And when the massive granite sarcophagi inside were opened, they too were empty. The mystery of the tiny door deepened in 2011. A new, more advanced robot was sent up the shaft. This one was equipped with a micro-snake camera, flexible enough to be pushed through a small hole that had been drilled in the door during a previous expedition. The world watched as the camera slipped through the opening and revealed what lay beyond. A small, hidden, undecorated chamber. But it wasn't empty. The camera panned across the back of the limestone door and focused on the 2 copper fittings. They weren't just handles, they were loops, intricate pins passing through the stone. And the back of one loop looked corroded, discolored, as if by a persistent chemical or electrical process. Then the camera looked down and scanned the floor of this secret room. There, in the ancient dust, were faint red markings, lines and symbols painted on the stone. To an engineer, these were not random graffiti. They were schematic, deliberate. They looked like electrical symbols. Could this be the smoking gun? Tangible proof that electricity or some form of energy once coursed through the very heart of this ancient structure? This is where the meticulous research of engineer Christopher Dunn becomes not just compelling, but essential. He argues with rigorous logic that if we abandon the failed tomb theory and analyze the Great Pyramid as a piece of machinery, everything begins to make sense. It is a structure of almost supernatural precision. It covers 13 acres, yet its base is level to within 7/8 of an inch. Its 100-ton granite casing stones were joined with a tolerance of 10,000ths of an inch, sealed with a mysterious cement we still cannot analyze or replicate. This, Dunn insists, is not the signature of a primitive culture with copper tools. It is the hallmark of a highly advanced machine tool society. He sees the complex system of shafts, chambers, and galleries not as passages for souls, but as a system of waveguides, reaction chambers, and resonators. He proposes that the Great Pyramid was, quite simply, a power plant. Dunn's theory is as elegant as it is shocking. He suggests a controlled chemical reaction was initiated in the Queen's chamber, which he identifies as a reaction chamber. 2 shafts would have delivered specific diluted chemicals. He proposes hydrated zinc chloride and hydrochloric acid, which would mix and react to produce vast quantities of hydrogen gas. This lighter-than-air hydrogen would then naturally flow upwards through another passage into the magnificent, soaring Grand Gallery. The gallery, with its corbelled walls and resonant design, would act as a sound filter, priming the hydrogen with specific acoustic frequencies. The energized gas would then flow into the king's chamber, a resonant box constructed entirely of solid Aswan granite, a material rich in quartz crystal. As the entire Giza Plateau vibrates with the Earth's natural harmonic energy, these vibrations would be amplified by the king's chamber, energizing the quartz crystals. This process, known as the piezoelectric effect, would convert the vibrations into microwave energy, which would be absorbed by the hydrogen atoms. This super-energized beam of microwave power would then be focused and directed out through the southern shaft, broadcasting usable, wireless energy across the land. The many obelisks scattered throughout Egypt, made of the same red granite and often capped with gold, would act as receivers, tuned to the pyramid's frequency, drawing power from the air to light temples and run unknown technologies. If this was a power plant, who were its operators? Who was this technology for? This question leads us to the most enigmatic and revolutionary figure in all of Egyptian history, the pharaoh Akhenaten. When his designated tomb was explored in 1891, it was predictably empty. No sign of his mummy has ever been found. The mystery of his death is fitting for the mystery of his life. Ascending to the throne in 1353 BC, Akhenaten unleashed a cultural and religious revolution. He systematically erased the entire Egyptian pantheon, Ra, Amun, Isis, Osiris, and declared that there was only one true god, the Aten. He depicted this god not as a man or an animal, but as a simple disk in the sky, with rays ending in hands extending down to the earth. He claimed this Aten was a physical object he saw in the sky, an object that inspired him to abandon Thebes and build a new capital city, Amarna, in its honor. While orthodoxy insists the Aten was merely the physical sun, the descriptions feel more specific, more technological. The idea that he was seeing and communicating with a massive extraterrestrial craft is a conclusion that becomes harder to ignore the deeper you look. The true enigma, however, is Akhenaten himself. In a radical break from all tradition, he commanded that he be depicted with stark, unflinching realism. And the image is shocking. Unlike the idealized, heroic physiques of other pharaohs, Akhenaten is shown with a bizarrely elongated skull, a long, thin face, a strange potbelly, and slender, almost androgynous limbs. His entire family, including his famous wife Nefertiti and their daughters, are all shown with the same strange, elongated crania. Some have tried to explain this through the practice of head binding, but the shape is inconsistent with that practice. More importantly, other anomalous skulls have been found in places like Peru and Malta that defy this explanation entirely. These skulls are not just reshaped, they are anatomically different, possessing a larger cranial volume, and, most incredibly, missing the sagittal suture, the fibrous joint that runs along the top of every human skull. When you hold a skull that is anatomically different from a human one, you are forced to confront the almost unthinkable possibility that some of these beings, including perhaps Akhenaten himself, were not fully human. Was he a hybrid, a descendant of beings not of this earth? And through all these questions, the Sphinx watches, silent. For centuries, it was believed to be only a head, until the French engineer Émile Barrès spent 11 years excavating its full body from the sand in the 1920s and 30s. Carved from a single piece of limestone bedrock, it is an object of profound mystery. It bears no inscriptions to tell us who built it or when. Mainstream Egyptology dates it to the pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BC. basing this entire conclusion on a single passing mention of his name on a much later tablet found between its paws. This tablet, the Dream Stele, primarily tells the story of a new kingdom pharaoh, Thutmose IV, who lived 1,000 years after Khafre. The story is incredible. It recounts how Prince Thutmose, not the true heir to the throne, took a rest in the shadow of the Sphinx's head. In a dream, the Sphinx itself spoke to him. It promised him the crown of Egypt if he would clear the sand that was choking its body. Thutmose fulfilled his side of the bargain, and against all odds, he became pharaoh. The history of Egypt was literally altered by a conversation with a stone statue, but the stele contains an even more tantalizing clue. The Sphinx promises Thutmose that everything the eye of the Lord illuminates will be his. What was this flashing eye of the Lord? It sounds uncannily like a piece of technology, a communication device, a guiding light. And this brings the story full circle. For Thutmose IV, the man who spoke to the Sphinx, was the grandfather of Akhenaten, the man who worshipped the Aten disk in the sky. Could the eye of the Lord and the Aten disk be one and the same? A single, advanced, technological object, an eye in the sky, that guided the fortunes of this strange, otherworldly royal family for generations. This also brings to mind the prophecies of the American mystic Edgar Cayce, who claimed in the 1930s that a hidden hall of records containing the lost history of Atlantis and all mankind lies in a chamber beneath the paws of the Sphinx, waiting to be discovered when the time is right. All of these threads, the power plant, the empty tombs, the strange biology, the celestial communications, all point toward the central obsession of the ancient Egyptians, the science of transformation. Their entire culture was a finely tuned machine geared towards one goal, ensuring the transition of consciousness from the physical body to an eternal, celestial existence. The mummification process was not a crude ritual. It was a highly sophisticated medical procedure. They knew with absolute certainty that to prevent decay, you must remove water, the painstaking removal of the internal organs, the desiccation of the body with natron salt, the careful wrapping in linen with protective amulets. It was all a form of spiritual technology. Their core spiritual belief in the Ka, the life force, and the Ba, the personality or soul, reuniting in the afterlife, was the software for this hardware. The core of their mythology, the story of Osiris being killed and then resurrected by Isis and Anubis, was the blueprint. Their temple walls are not just art, they are technical manuals covered with images of human transformation into celestial beings. It forces you to wonder if this sacred science was a legacy taught to them by beings who had already mastered that transformation, beings who came from the stars. And so, as the evening sun casts long, sharp shadows from the pyramids, and the first stars begin to prick the darkening indigo sky, I am left here on the sands of Giza with a universe of questions. The official story is a ruin, weathered away by a mountain of evidence it cannot explain. The pyramids were not tombs. Akhenaten was not a normal man. The Sphinx is more than a statue. What I see is the ghost of a lost chapter of human history, a chapter that speaks of a symbiotic relationship with beings from elsewhere, of a clean, free energy source that could power a global civilization, and of a sacred science of the soul that we have tragically forgotten. The story of our past is infinitely more complex and extraordinary than we have been taught, and its secrets are still here, waiting in the stone, sleeping in the sand.